Dennis Fair,
Here.
Sherry Jasper, Dave Martineau,
Here.
Sharon McElwain, Peggy McKillop here, Steve Olson,
Here.
Dave Check.
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. Next is approval of the agenda. Any questions regarding the agenda? Otherwise, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion.
Motion by Martineau, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Fear, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The agenda is approved as presented. Next is 2.01, review of superintendent search proposals. So you can see we've got the list, and I'll turn it over to Chandra.
Thank you. We were able to get the request for proposal circulated ahead of our July 1st timeline. It was ready, giving firms additional time to respond with a July 11th return time. That more time for them would be better. So we circulated, I believe it was 17 inquiries related to the proposal. They were due last Friday, July 11th at 4 o'clock. As you can see by the attached, there were 4 firms that had responded to the RFP, all of which I think did a very good job technically responding to the RFP. I think if you're able to read through them, most of them, all of them would do a fine job of providing this service for you. So Sarah and I did go through a rubric, a scoring rubric based upon, the technical responses to the RFP. I can certainly share that with you now, but maybe the board wants to have some dialogue about what they see in the proposals. And then I think the task tonight, at least on the timeline, was to decide which of the responses the board would choose to interview. We have tentatively set aside next Monday night for that to occur. So deciding if you'd prefer those candidates to be here in person, or if it's okay to do the interviews virtually, or I'll just throw it out there, maybe at the end of tonight, you're not interested in interviewing one way or the other. Either you've made a decision or none of the 4. I can open the floor, or I can share the scoring. It's up to you, Mr. President.
I would say open the floor.
Sure. Anybody have anything they want to discuss?
If you have any technical questions, I have obviously reviewed these front to back. The other thing I was going to add was it related to cost. When you look at the base cost for all of our proposals, the majority of them are similar. There is one that is quite a bit less, but when you do read the proposals, they're actually doing quite a bit less for you. And when you look at all the a la carte options, should you choose similar services with all of the firms to be in line, costs are actually very similar when you choose all of those options. So I don't know that that's a determining factor or not, but just wanted to put it out there that in totality, based upon what we believe the board is probably looking for in assistance with this search, I think you're looking at pretty similar costs between all 4 proposals.
What about the WASB service?
It's just a base cost.
Yes,
But
I
then
know.
when you look at all the additional a la carte things, most of the other firms are providing that service.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to use those a la carte services to be in line with what the other firms would provide, they're quite similar. And it would just be a matter of which ones were chosen to be able to complete a total cost on that.
The only reason I bring up WASB, they would have an extremely wide network based on, obviously being, Wisconsin School Board Association. But if we were to do this on our own, they might be an option for us to at least use their bare minimum services and then fill in with what services we would
At
like.
the last meeting, the board voted to use a service.
Okay.
So I guess the question here tonight is, do we want to interview anybody? And then the second, if we do want to interview, how many do we want to interview? Do we just want to interview 2, or if we want to do more than 2, do we do all 4?
Well, but the WASB option would still be in line with voting for hiring a service.
Yes, yep,
We
all,
wouldn't be paying for all the rest of it, and we could tailor some of the the process to what we think is more important?
Yep, I think that comes more into line with negotiations.
Well, I'm more interested in bringing in good candidates. The negotiations will happen down the road, but
I think all of them would cast a pretty wide net, you know, and I understand what you're saying about WASB, and I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying each one of these have built a network of support and resources and interest that I don't think you'd be disappointed with any of them. I guess that's the point.
So we used McPherson last time, correct?
Correct.
And do they have the same principles? I see Damien is still part of that. Is the other one?
Brian,
Brian.
yeah.
Brian, so they're both back there, so there's that familiarity as far as, and was everybody pretty comfortable with their process, how they did things? Was there any
think so.
gaps?
We were on a pretty compressed timeline, and for it being COVID,
With 1920, that was that spring.
I mean, Steve, you were on the board,
Yeah.
Dave, you were on the board,
Sharon did a review for them.
Sharon was on the board at the time, Peggy, you were certainly in a different
If
capacity.
you asked me, I couldn't even come up with something negative about them.
So just kind of a history, so, you know, Heidi submitted a resignation, and the resignation happened after the contract period for superintendents. So normally we would have anticipated having 30+ applicants. We had 6, and we had to scramble around for those 6. And then when we had the 6, McPherson, they also did the background checks, and they do even farther. They would go into contacting districts and other people to see, okay, it's this person. We omitted a few of them just based on their research. And at that point, we were, you know, like I said, that we were lucky. They dug Jeff out of Germantown, who had just retired, but then his kids went back to school, so he wanted, so that's how we end up getting Jeff. But
They're very in-depth in their service.
so WASB does it. I've heard not negative stories, but there's a few gaps in some of the services they provide. Like you said, if you go the a la carte stuff. So I'm not favoring one or the other yet. I'm going to be asking questions, but that's just kind of how we got to McPherson. Obviously knows the district. That was only 6 years ago.
I think WASB does a wonderful job for smaller districts. I think it becomes a lot more work for the board with some of that a la carte. As you said last time, how many hours in interviews?
We had 1 week. We had 18 hours in 1 week. We got to the interview process and stuff like that. So we ended up, I think, interviewing 3 candidates. There's a whole process that they would explain to you once you get going. But it was an effort, and obviously it was under the not ideal circumstances. This, because we've gotten plenty of notice from Jeff, we're doing it right this time. You know, the process is not under a timeline so much. We're doing a regular timeline, so we can do everything correctly. We won't be as compressed with our interview schedules and stuff too. I mean, we were desperate to get somebody in place.
Yeah, the firms kind of laid out their processes in their proposals.
One piece I might add is that it was an RFP process in 2020 as well. I think we circulated a similar amount, I think got 5 or 6 responses, and through an interview process, that's how McPherson and Jacobson was chosen. I did go back, in 2015, the board did use WASB. I don't know who the board used in 2013, and I couldn't,
Is that with
I don't know if
Brad
I just didn't get far enough back to find that out, but I do know that a place called Fox River Consultants was used in 2009 and in 2005. So, you know, the board's used a plethora of firms over time.
Who did Tom use? Do you remember?
That was Fox River Consultants. I don't believe they do business anymore, but And I don't remember much about the WASB process, and maybe I probably wasn't involved in too much of it. I believe it was one of the candidates that's still doing searches for WASB. And they
Yeah,
did,
well, I think they're a great,
as far as I know, they did a great job.
organization, yeah. Yep. I'm wondering, there was a little bit more insight, or there were candidates in mind, I think, with that board at that time.
Probably.
I'd be curious to see what your ranking was too, as far as how, and we'll get to that whenever.
Yeah.
To see how with your matrices, I mean, you're basically put a matrix and a analytic to it. I would be curious to see how you rated them and what were there any significant things that would lead us to not take it, one of the groups.
Do we have any more discussion before we get to that?
I haven't been through this before. The only thing I was really kind of wondering was how much input do we have as far as questions that any of these services would be providing? Like, are we gonna generate a list of questions that we want them to ask, or how much input do we have on that side
They
of
will
stuff?
come and interview us first, and then, you know, they will go out, we do the final interviewing of the candidates, but they will go out there, they will promote it, and they will also give us a short list. If we have 40 applicants, we're obviously not gonna go through 40, so they will shorten that down to what they think is a viable number. And then if there's significant or there's minor details about a candidate, they will let us know. Well, they did that in the past, let us know, you know, this guy's a good guy, but there was an issue here, that kind of stuff.
But when they
And those are always good questions, like when we interview
Sure.
firms too,
Okay. Fair enough.
if we're going to interview the firms.
All right, well, Chad, why don't you tell us, first of all, give us a little background on the rubric and what was important to
Sure.
you, and then let us know the results.
Yeah, let me just share a screen here. Thank you, Angela. So there are probably several different ways that you can do this, but what made sense to us was just to take the evaluation criteria from the RFP, right? And then look at the proposals through those sets of questions, and you see that each of these are weighted. So we did put together a 5-point scale, just went through and scored each of the criteria area. And at the end of the day, when we completed that, I'll try to make this bigger.
I got it.
Hazard Young Atea was 3 on a 5-point scale. Hazard Young Atea at 3.85, McPherson Jacobson 4.475, WASB at 3.725, and Ray and Associates at 3.7. So not a lot of separation necessarily between 3 out of the 4. I think part of what changed that scoring or set one firm apart was just the technical way they responded to the RFP. It was very much tailored to what we developed for the RFP. So they had their proposal exactly match that. So it was easy to discern. And not that the other firms didn't do a good job of taking their approach and making sure they answered all of our questions, but there were just certain things in their process that probably separated some of them. I can go deeper into that. We did this independently. We were not together when we scored. Didn't discuss. Just let Sarah know that I'd be available for any of the questions related to the RFP if she wants to talk about them. And
I find that interesting because you, who have had years of experience, versus Sarah, who's pretty new and has never been through this. Thank you guys for
you're welcome.
going through
You're welcome.
that and doing that.
Seems like if we're gonna interview more than one, we got one that really stands out, plus we gave the nod to them last time. Do you see anything that really sticks out between the other three? They all seem really close.
They're close, and I think offer, you know, a firm that we had discussed prior has a pretty extensive à la carte list of things that can be added on to the proposal. One has a pretty good track record of finding candidates, seating candidates in things other than schools, which may or may not be helpful to the board. And one was, not saying it's a pro or a con, just a difference, is a little more national. And national in terms of the consultants are spread out across the US as well, not necessarily with anybody in Wisconsin at this time that would work on the search. Again, not saying that's good, bad, right, wrong, or indifferent, it was just a difference between the four.
In the past, have most of our candidates come out of the state of Wisconsin? Can you have any memory of somebody coming from outside of the state? Like would
The majority have, certainly the ones that have made it to the interview process. But I do think that, you know, given our border situation, I think we have had candidates from out of state as well.
Yeah, and I think some of your out-of-state candidates are Wisconsinites looking to get back to the state.
I just didn't know if the policies and stuff in Wisconsin would vary so much if they come from another state that there'd be a learning curve with legalities and stuff like that.
Systems are different, but similar in a lot of ways. Probably the biggest barrier is licensure.
Yeah. Plus many of the states use NOLA, right? The same.
Colorado or something? Missouri?
Usually just
Yeah,
requires.
the guy from the state.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, as far as like legality, when we review, right, NOLA,
Neola is what you're saying.
yeah, what did I say, NOLA? NOLA, sorry.
I think that was a big thing in 1920. I mean, we had 6, which I think is good because we were on like a 2-month time frame, and it was COVID, so that had to have played into it, I would think.
And I think this time around we can anticipate a much larger number of candidates if we're doing it right. I think it's kind of a destination place.
Certainly.
We have so many pros to put out there that.
Yeah, I think it would be very advantageous for us, given the timeline we're working under, to see a much deeper pool of candidates.
Yes, I think so.
So Chad, one of the things that I think the board really takes your opinion on is probably crunching the numbers. I know you had mentioned something about comparing apples to apples, but I mean, knowing what we're probably gonna pick on the à la carte and what comes with some of these, how do you think they compare price wise?
It was kind of mentioned, I mean, it really depends on how much work the board wants to put into this. And if you wanna use the firms to do a lion's share of it, I think the proposals will actually be quite similar. Cause I think you may want many of the bolt-on things off the à la carte menu that maybe haven't been chosen by past boards, but those of you that were here in 2020 do know what it looks like to see what that kind of full service option looks like. And you know, from the outside looking in, I felt that was pretty beneficial to the board.
Besides the one from WASB, looking at the other ones, they were in shouting range of each other anyway.
Is any board member leaning in particular to any of the other ones?
I not really. I mean, obviously, we have that relationship with Ms. McPherson and Jacobson, but does that, and they know our district from just being here, whether that's an advantage or disadvantage, I don't know. So that would be the only, if we had to put a little checklist, small check, I mean, ultimately, you know, we worked with those folks for a month or two and they were here a lot. But that doesn't mean you can't make new relationships either.
Well, that's the other thing though, we've also got at least 3 board members that are familiar with that. The previous one, they seem to be heads and tails above on your rubric. We don't have to interview 2, 3, we could tonight just decide to go with McPherson too.
I will
I
say that,
think-
oh,
I think tonight we can decide not to interview. I think next Tuesday's meeting, we could
That's
choose.
when it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
we'll say this, Sharon and I had a discussion a couple months ago about the hiring after he announced, and she was very familiar with McPherson, and she only had really good things to say about them. And since I don't have any experience, right, I'm gonna rely on, right, Sharon to kind of give me a hand in this. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, do we, is this just academic when we say we're gonna set aside a night that's spending our time, their time, just to bring in another, to say that we did too? Or should we just make the decision that, we're not gonna interview, we've got enough information to make the decision on Tuesday?
If you decide to go that route, I mean, I did go back through the RFP and it's the board's discretion to make that decision, so there's nothing committing the board to any process.
I think if there was a Grand Canyon of difference in prices and stuff, it would probably behoove us to do that. But since I'm still in favor of WASB, but I know others are looking at the other three. Those three are not going to be much different in price, so I think the board would be well within its rights to say we're gonna go with this company because we feel comfortable with that and we would like to do this. Otherwise, if there was, like I said, a big discrepancy, then probably it would be, I mean, not that it would change our mind, but I think that the taxpayer would probably insist on that, but I don't
Yeah,
think that's.
and I get we need to be responsible with the taxpayers' money. But it's not always the best value
Yeah.
to go with the cheapest.
Mhm.
And I think that's what how the board decided on.
One chance to do this right.
Yeah,
If
and
we
it's big.
don't do it right, then we're in a shit show because now we're trying to catch up or replace or whatever we're doing. Because that's why I was never in favor of the board taking a lot of control of this, because I needed somebody that had more time, more knowledge, inside knowledge, and was willing to go the extra mile to do references and to do background checks and stuff to make sure that we don't, you think of the stuff like Altoona and stuff like that, the mistakes they made and how that came to bite them. We can't afford to make a mistake.
I will say something, I know this is part for the negotiations part, but when we find our candidate, hopefully it's somebody that wants to grow into this job and stay here for a long time, because at times we've been a placeholder for someone to be here a year or two and then disappear. So when we get to the pay or whatever negotiations, we have to be clever enough to install some incentives to make sure that that person, right, continues for a length of time. Otherwise, we'll be doing this all over again in 2 or 3 years.
Well, and it's not all about compensation, that is some of our job too, to build a good relationship with the leader so that
I know.
they don't wanna leave.
But, but at the same time, right, incentives, right,
Yeah.
are always helpful. And, there's been a couple superintendents that I thought I would have liked to seen stay, and a couple stayed longer than I didn't want them to, but.
Chad's pretty good
Well,
at.
I would just say turn the
when the board
keys over to
asks.
Chad and just let him be superintendent, but I don't think he wants to do that.
I'm where I belong.
I know,
Yeah.
I figured you'd say that, so.
What's the average tenure of a superintendent? 4 years now?
Is it that?
Half.
2.5? I mean, it's unrealistic to say, will you be here for 8 or 10 years?
Well, no, I'm not saying you have to.
What you're
require
saying,
that.
we've gotta make it welcoming enough that he
Can we
wants to.
backload it, paying 50,000
Yeah.
year one?
Should we
But
get
you know,
a
if you
stay-
stay,
NFL,
if you stay here so many years, we'll open a TSA. I mean,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly,
things
like
could
that.
be,
Yep.
that can come into it.
So this will be the 8th superintendent hire in the 24 years that I've been here, which I don't like that statistic.
No, I don't
We
either.
thank you for your tenure.
But I do remember that coming up in discussion 5 years ago, where tenure was an important thing to the board, and when you factor in the 2.5 to 2.7 year job expectancy, and at this point, it's been 24 years since you've had somebody for more than 5 years. So I think you have to kind of approach this from 5 years is a good amount of time.
Sure.
Oh, I'd be happy with 5 years, I just don't want a year or two.
Well, I believe Mr. Holmes was going to be a year or two, and he liked us well enough to stay for 5.
6?
6, see?
So, looking at it, does anybody think that there's a purpose in going through the interview process, or are we just spending their time and our time?
I think we're better off just moving forward with McPherson, not do the interviews. I thought their proposal was better. Frankly, I didn't even care for the Ray Associates or the Hazard one. The WASB one, I like the price, but like you say, so.
So I
Are you
think the
making a
important-
motion to forgo interviews?
Yeah, cause the important question, like Peggy said, because of what's on the agenda tonight, are we comfortable that we don't need any more information from interviews? So that tonight, we're saying we'd make some sort of a motion to go without the interview process.
Do you have an idea for that motion?
Yeah, because the process of selecting them is for the regular board meeting on Tuesday. While we're just saying it, do we come back on Monday and interview them or not? I say we don't interview, that we.
Is that the only date we had set aside, so we were?
It is, we were considering Wednesday as well, but the preference would have been before Tuesday.
Tuesday's agenda.
So
Otherwise,
we
we
could
have
get
to
it
wait.
on the agenda
Next Tuesday is our regular meeting.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
what Wednesday were we considering?
after, but that would have required another meeting.
Yeah, another board meeting.
If we could make a decision on Tuesday.
So
Okay.
the only, and I don't wanna weigh in here, but I think if you would have seen a different set of consultants with the top rated firm at this point, it might be worthy of an interview and then compare. Ultimately, we've set up the interview process to be, talk to us about your request for proposal, and it's a little bit more time for you to get to know the consultants and interact with them, you know, probably on a relatively formal basis, but, you know, a little bit more of a get to know you period. So, you know, without a change in that personnel and first comfort level, using the same firm, I think you're very.
You surprised that this is the only people, were you looking for more, or was there somebody that you were looking for that you thought would have submitted a proposal?
You know, that's a good question, because when you do look at the list of 17 consultants, and there were some that replied and said, we just don't have the consultants and the resources right now to take on
Research, yeah.
the service. So, you know, I would have expected this, maybe a couple more. And I think that list can be cleaned up a little bit to not be quite so extensive, because I think there are some folks in there that probably would not consider submitting a proposal to Chipotle.
And you, after our last meeting, you had mentioned someone, and I did reach out to them and ask them if they wanted to be included in the RFP process, and if so, give me contact information. They didn't respond to me, so.
No, like I said, this is who we run with, those are our choices. Obviously, we're not gonna chase people down at this point if either they want it or they don't want it.
I think you have 4 very good firms here. I don't know that more proposals would have led you in too terribly different of a direction. But I think you got the best of the best that are available.
So would it be beneficial for us to meet them, even if it's just McPherson Monday, for those of us who have not ever dealt with them before? Would that be beneficial? Or not?
I think if we're gonna vote on them, I mean, if we're gonna say that, then they will be here a lot
After.
after the
Yes.
process, so either it could be kind of redundant, because
There'll be plenty of time.
it's easier to ask.
Yeah, you'll,
That's
you'll
fine.
have some meetings set up, but
Nope, I'm, okay, I'm fine with that.
That's,
Well, I think the motion language that we would be looking for is, Dennis is making a motion that we forego the interview process and move right to the vote on Tuesday.
and I second that motion.
That's exactly what I said.
I wanted to quote it perfectly.
Yeah, it
So,
was
so
direct
was that
quote.
the AI version? You were just the regular?
Yeah, it was basically just as I was.
You're comfortable with this?
Yep. I'd be comfortable with any of the four, honestly. I don't, I think the familiarity gives McPherson Jacobson a leg up. The consultants did a great job.
Right.
Many of you know them. We're very comfortable with the process. They did well. I wouldn't see a reason not to use them.
I think if someone were to contact you next week from the other groups and ask why, those are exactly the reasons. You know, we've used them in the past, we're comfortable, they know the district, we felt that that would be the best option for our district at this time. It was not a knock necessarily against their organization, it's more a comfort level.
All right, so we have a motion by Fear, second by Martineau. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think that's all the business that we have for tonight.
So we need a motion to adjourn?
We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Martineau, is there a second?
Second that.
Second by Olson. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you for your time.
Welcome.